Welcome back to this week's Parent Parsha series, Parshat Shoftim. I wanted to talk about an idea that I'm thinking about a lot in terms of something that comes up often in my practice, is the idea of trying to make sure that we're building children who have confident senses of self, that feel like they can recognize the strengths that they have, the things that they're good at, and in that space also be able to recognize maybe the things that they could stand to work on. We're thinking about the month of Elul. We're thinking about this idea of what are the things that we feel like maybe we can feel proud about walking into the month of Elul, and what are the things that in Rosh Hashanah, and what are the things that we feel like, you know what, maybe we could have done better this year, or it was a hard one to fix, or maybe that we wish we had focused on it more during the year and maybe we didn't. But even Elul and the time of the year that we're in Rosh Hashanah notwithstanding, I think there is this balancing act of how do we be people who feel good about ourselves? How do we make our children and foster an environment in which our children can grow up feeling that they are confident, that they can identify the strengths that they have in the present, in the here and the now, and balance that at the same time with a certain sense of humility, a certain sense of anivut, which comes up as a general theme in our Torah knowledge, in our liturgy, but particularly thinking about this idea of Moshe Rabbeinu, right? Who was Anav Mikol Hadam. He was humble, the most humble person. And so when we think about that, does that mean that he didn't know that he was an amazing leader? Did he not know that he had this very unique and special relationship to Hashem? What is the balancing act, and how does a person maintain the balance between humility and confidence? And are they two different things that somehow we oftentimes put together, thinking that if we're confident, we must not be humble, and if we're humble, then we must not be confident because we must be putting ourselves down in order to tap into a sense of humility. I think sometimes people translate the word humility as a sense of like nothingness, and in that way, there's like a similarity or a synonymous with therefore I am not confident because I don't view myself as having like a presence or a personality or something that has value. And I think that's actually a very negative and detrimental way to think about humility versus confidence, and also in thinking about the ways in which we need to instill in our children a sense of groundedness in the things that they're capable at and the things that they're good at, but at the same time making space for them to also be able to focus on things that they could get better at, or the notion that they can have confidence about the things that they've experienced, with the recognition that humility about the things that are coming. And I think that's actually the key distinction between confidence and humility. And I think it's something that's important to articulate to ourselves, to articulate to our children. The idea that confidence is about the things that we've, I don't want to say mastered, but the things in which we know about ourselves based on things that have happened to us. I feel confident about my ability to do X, Y, and Z because I have done it before in the past with success. And please God, I'll be able to do it again, but I have the roadmap and the experience to know that I've done it before. And humility is about the things that are unknown, the things that we have coming down the line that we haven't even thought about. And in that sense, there's a connection to this idea of humility and I think godliness, right? And this idea that only God can know what is in the future. And if we're able to really incorporate the idea that we don't know what's coming next, and maybe we have confidence that we will hopefully be able to handle those things, but the humility to recognize that we don't know what is coming down into the future without it causing a sense of paralysis, but at the same time, being able to be humbled by our limitations. One of the things that got me thinking about this theme this week is the idea that in the Gemara Brachot, they go through how and the different people, or the ways, the standard ways in which people daven the Shemona Esrei that we do multiple times a day, every day. And so the average person, right, bows at the brachot at the beginning and then bows at the end with modim. And if you're a Kohen Gadol, you bow at the beginning of every bracha and you bow at the end of every bracha. But the king has to bow the entire time. And in this week's parsha, we talk a lot about king, what a king has to do, what a king's allowed to have, what he's not allowed to have. He can't have too many wives. He can't have too many horses. He has to carry and have a special Torah that he carries around with him all of the time. Sometimes when people are in, and the obvious question is, why, right? What's so fundamentally different about the king that everybody is busy doing all that there's so much wrapped up into this idea of creating a sense of really what it is humility, right? This idea that there is some power and being, God, that knows what is coming down the line that you haven't anticipated for. And when you're in a role of power where you feel like you have so much control, sometimes you imagine that in reality, you have all of that control. And the more power you have, the more powerful of a person you are, the more that you have to figure out ways to demonstrate in a physical way that as a reminder, as an internal reminder that's not actual and that's not reality. And I think it's like, it's an interesting piece. We think about this idea of developing confidence and humility. We think about it as we are talking to our children about the upcoming month of Elul, of Rosh Hashanah, the idea of wanting our children to not feel self-deprecating, but at the same time hold confidence, hold the things that they're good at, and thinking about the ways in which we can talk about humility, not as something that's frightening, right? Like this idea of something coming down the line that we won't be able to control is a very frightening component. But when you tether it with confidence, which is really what it is, it's a tethering, then one of the things you are able to say is, only God can know what is coming next. And it's awe-inspiring, but it also inspires us to take a pause and think about all the things. Sometimes it's okay to be vulnerable. Sometimes it's okay to not know what's coming next and to rely either on the people around us, to rely on our tefillah to Hashem, to help us through any challenges or wonderful things that are coming down the line that we haven't anticipated, but also to really hone into character traits that we work on during the course of the year, to think about confidence in ourselves. So I think those are just like a couple of different ideas that I was thinking about, particularly in regards to this week's Parsha. I guess in some ways it's timely, but I don't think it's unique to this time of year. I think it's something we want to be thinking about. I also think it's something we want to be pointing out to our kids, right? When they do something, articulating it so that they can put it in their little memory bank, like, oh yeah, remember I actually did that. Remember I went somewhere and I didn't know anybody and it was really scary and overwhelming, but then I made friends. So that way, when I'm going somewhere new, I'm thinking about all those kids going to Israel for the year. I know that like I was able to do that and I was able to make friends and I was nervous and I don't know what's going to happen. There are things that I don't know. And that's like humbling because I've been able to like go to school with the same people and know who is going to be there. And so it's humbling to have to make new friends. And what if they judge me? And there's so many unknowns, but at the same time, being able to like go back into that like grab bag that you already have built up of like, but I've made friends before and I've gone to new places before. And I think that's something that we want to be helping our kids articulate, whether they're just going to school again, whether it is that they're going somewhere unknown that's new to them, like Israel, that they haven't done before into a new environment, whatever the transition is. I think really helping to remind our kids that they have something to hold on to because they have so many things in their toolbox that they may not even know existed and is there. Parsha Treats. Okay, so I think there's a lot of fun things. As you know, I try to not always successfully give different ideas that aren't related to food. So I think that like, I'm not suggesting that anybody start taking off their wedding rings and using them as napkin holders, but if you have any type of like random gems in your house that you could like even like turn into like, let's say take a pipe cleaner and turn it and put a gem on top. I think like it's a very fun idea. And it speaks to this idea of kings not having too many wives. And I think the same thing is true with the horse party treats. I'm thinking like bales of hay for not having too many horses. There's also something, if you Google it and you're inspired, called haystacks that are much easier than those hail bales, but I actually think they're not too hard. It looks like just marshmallow treats that were cut up. I think a lot of stuff around judges, right? Shoftim v'shotrim, and making sure that everybody's judged equally and fairly. So I have gavels that do not look terribly awfully hard. They look like they're marshmallows dipped in chocolate with a pretzel stick. Sometimes I actually find that to be like a little bit more annoying than I always think it's going to be. Working with marshmallows is like a little sticky, but it might be okay. And somehow the pretzel rods sometimes break, which is its own little bag of tricks. I think also lots of things with kings in this week's Parsha. So you could do what's called just like a regular bundt cake. Somehow people are calling it crown cakes, which is like a total win because we're good at bundt cakes. So, and they're not hard because they're a dump, and you can use Duncan Hines, also a win. Or you could do something a little more fancy and like get cookies, even just like buy cookies and then cut off the corners. You don't need to do hearts. You don't have to go big or go home, and make it in the shape of a crown. I also think that you could venture down this road. I really didn't yet get like so creative around it, but I think there's stuff to do with Egla Arufa. I think there's also like a space to talk about what it means to take responsibility. Like I don't love it, but the notion of the Egla Arufa is that like someone died, you didn't even know like that they were in your town, that they were visiting. Like it's really like a certain idea of like looking around in community and taking culpability and taking responsibility, which is also like a real parenting moment in terms of helping our children to take a pause, look around, see where the other is. I think it's actually been even harder in COVID. I was reflecting even myself in terms of just like, you don't see as many people who are new. Maybe you're not as out there. Maybe you don't go to shul as much. Maybe you're not, whatever it is, people are more hesitant to have people over in a certain sense of hachnasat orchim if they don't know them, and trying to get a little more creative of what that looks like. It doesn't have to be a meal. It could be outside. It could be without food, and just trying to figure out ways to make people feel comfortable and welcome, and being aware around the people around us and what they need. So wishing everybody a Shabbat Shalom, and a good almost end of the summer. I know a lot of people are having their last summer Shabbat in camp, and hoping that everyone has a smooth, many kids going away to Israel for the year. So I hope everybody has a smooth transition, and wishing everybody a Shabbat Shalom.